Hey, John here. Looking at the Discord really quick. So last week or so, what is this, the 28th? Yeah, it feels like a month has passed. Wow. Since the last video that I recorded on the VDP and updating the interrupt signal so that we can pull it without using interrupts if we want that option, and to be able to use the NMI and things like that. There's been some more discussion about the joystick ports and other aspects of the VDP. And what struck me as darn right worth sneaking into the dev branch here before I do another release is to tweak the joystick ports a little bit. Penguin of Evil over here had a pretty good idea. As always, thank you to all my patrons. You really help out. Thank you very much. So, what's been going on here is Production Dave has been working on some games. He's the one that wrote the Tetris and Snake games that you saw a little of in my channel in the past. And Penguin of Evil here was chiming in with some thoughts on the fact that, there are joysticks out there that have two fire buttons instead of just the one. Now, we were also having a little chat about PS2 keyboards and the like, and whether that's feasible or not. And, well, I suppose it would be. But doing so right now would, I feel, kind of send me chasing down a dark alley. The joystick modification here makes a lot of sense because it's a simple add-on with backward compatibility, so there's zero impact on any existing software, and it gives us a few more options. So what I thought was, let's look at the MSX interface. This is much like the Atari joystick, but it has an extra button. So here's a picture of what they look like. The same DE9 connectors, a little talking about it and what's compatible, what's not. And some warnings about not plugging. Don't plug an RS-232 cable in here because it's not. Look, if you're watching my channel, you're expected to understand just because something fits, you don't stick it in there unless it's the right thing. Yes, RS-232C will damage the interface chip on the VDP if you plug it in the wrong thing. If you hook up an AC line cord in here, it's liable to mess up more than just the interface. So don't hook up the wrong things, all right? So here's the pinout, and we'll look more closely at the retro VDP schematic in a minute, and we'll see that the up, down, left, right are the same. And button A matches the one button on the regular Atari joystick. The out pin over here, this here is what I have connected to ground right now on the retro, because the way all these buttons hook up, I've got pull-up resistors on the up, down, left, right, and so on, so that when you press these buttons, what you're doing is you're connecting the button input to ground. When the button's released, it floats, and because there's pull-ups on the VDP board, it becomes a high voltage, all right? So to make this compatible with an MSX Joypad, I guess they call it, what I really need to do is add a ground on pin 9 and 5 volts here on pin 5. Now, as Penguin of Evil also points out, that we should be somewhat careful. If you're going to send 0.5 out on here, especially if somebody plugs in the wrong device, if you put in an Atari, paddle, those have potentiometers and they use these pins. You could burn up the paddle, or you could short out your 5-volt power supply, mess up the retro. Who knows what happened? So he suggested that we do some sort of current limiting on here. And I'm going to take it one step further and even put a jumper on there, so that unless you really want 5 volts on this pin 5, you don't hook it up. You just leave out the jumper. So here I am in the VDP project GitHub repo. If I do a status, you can see I'm on the dev branch. And if I do a git log, you should see that I'm on what? This is the diffs and stuff. This is what I pushed up when I did the video on the first round of mods for Rev 2. So if I do these modifications today, since I've already talked about it, created an official discussion of something, I'm going to create Rev 2.1 today. So here is where we left off last time. As you remember, I added J6 and I added J7 over here. Now, the existing joysticks, you see we have pins 7, 9, and 5 all disconnected. Now, it could be pretty easy to add a simple bodge wire and connect, one of these pins, like pin 7, and run it over to one of the other unused inputs on the, well, actually not on that header there, but yes, over here on U6 and U7. Because we were only using 5 of these inputs, I added J7 over here. That took it to 6. It means we can still add 2 more inputs from these joysticks, of which one would make us compatible with the MSX. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'd like these to be compatible with both ports. In other words, the up, down, left, and right, and so on are on the same input port bits for both ports. So A81 and A91 won't get used for this task, all right? So as you recall, I chose which pins were going to be used for which function. Because this is a new project, I just decided it would be arbitrary. And I chose based on the easiest way to route these tracks without having crossovers and up and down through vias and all over the crazy places with the circuit board. So the choice today will be to pick one that's convenient for, it turns out, pin 7. Now, it's unfortunate that the most convenient one is A81, which is the pin that we used for this jumper down here. Gall darn it. So what else is not in use here? It looks like we could go to A83 or A84, which are down here, annoyingly far away, but not a big deal because you could always run this track around and down like this and hit those other ones, okay? And probably the same thing here as well. If there's enough room in there, it looks like there is. That shouldn't be a problem, okay? So I'm going to guess A4, A84 and A94 for these other pins. And that goes to pin 7, I believe, right? So where are we at? Pin 7 is where button number 2 is. Pin 6 is button number 1. We already connect pin 8 to ground. We just have to make 9 ground, and 5 goes to 5. So that's easy enough. As I said, we want to make sure that nobody's going to blow up their boards. And when I was getting started, if this is like your first exposure to this sort of thing, oops, I didn't want to delete that. I want to delete the no connect. Come on. I hit the delete key, come on. I can't think and type at the same time. Okay, actually all these have to go, right? We're going to connect all of these up to other stuff. As I was thinking out loud a moment ago while I was trying to fumble with my keyboard here, oops. I can't think and type at the same time. Wow. Okay. If you're just getting started and this is kind of your exposure, your first project, and I've seen some notes from people that stated that that is the case for them and they're having a lot of fun. In my early days, blowing stuff up by mistake happened all the time. So my point is I want to make this optional. In fact, Penguin of Evil even suggested that we take it one step further and we put a resistor in here. Now, you don't need to have a resistor in there. Even if I put one in the schematic, you can just use a piece of wire and shunt it if you want to draw some real current out of there. I should be able to say copy. There we go. Put a resistor in there. Now, honestly, I wouldn't expect to use this resistor. I think it's a very good idea, which is why I'm putting it in. But my gut feeling is that if I were to use this, I would probably want it to just be connected to the raw 5 volts. And Therefore, I would just put a piece of wire in here and it would be 0 ohms, right? So here's the deal. If you make this a 100 ohm resistor and you short it to ground, do Ohm's law, E equals I times R, it should draw 50 milliamps, and 50 milliamps, 5 volts, should be 1/4 of a watt. So don't use these tiny ones. We need to get a 1/4 watt sized one, which should be one of these guys. There we go. All right, now I need it on both. Do we really need a separate 100 ohm resistor for each one? Probably not. And the motive to do it or not would be dependent on how much board real estate we have. If we look around on here, I'm seeing a convenient spot to put one over here. I mean, we can move stuff around and squeeze 2 in, I suppose, but I don't really want to do that. Let's bring in what we just modified. Oh, I didn't annotate those new parts. I'm not going to care about what letters they're given. Close this down. So I got 2 new parts in here. So we should see a resistor and a jumper. And we got a couple of options, right? We could have one jumper for both ports. We could kind of, I mean, you could shoehorn it in right there. That really wouldn't be a problem, I don't think. I don't know if that's actually a big enough footprint for a 1/4 watt. That's a pretty tight 1/4 watt resistor. Let me go choose a longer. Oh, come on. Here we go. Let's use a longer footprint. Where are we at? That one is what, 7.62? Come on. Be readable here. We probably want to go to something more like that, or even bigger still. I mean, if we have enough room, we got enough room. I could put a giant one. This should be okay. Okie dokie. If we do the update again, it'll say that one's gone and make a new one. Now, what I was using for reference, by the way, for those of you following along at home, I was putting it up against this connector here because I know over the years that I can shoehorn a 1/4 watt resistor in across 4 holes and a 1/10 of an inch apart. And it's a tight fit, but you can do it. But by using this larger one, this is going to be a very comfortable fit, all right? So this should be perfectly reasonable. If you want to put a 1/4 watt resistor in here, why don't you just kind of sneak it over there? And if you don't want it, and you do want power, you can just put a jumper across like that in order to go with 5 volts without any current limiting. Let's get these symbols out of the way. Put R1 over there. And J4 over here is probably going to be a block, so we'll put it up on here, maybe like that. Move this in here. Because it has to be, reachable. Let's just put it right there. Okay. Now we could put another jumper way over here so they could jumper each one separately. There's room. I suppose we could try it. In fact, how this board is laid out, it might actually be better to put both of them over on this side. I mean, we could even move this RCA connector too if we really wanted to. There's a lot of room over there. This is kind of cramped. Let's go ahead and put this, heck, I could put it right in there. Why not? Kind of limit what we can do with the RCA, but that's okay. I will get over it. Whoa. That's not too bad. Of course, now it means I got to take 5 volts from here, bring it out over there, somehow get through this without messing up the video signal. There's really not any room here. I could actually put this resistor underneath this chip, but that would dictate the type of socket that you would use in here. Let's show this like this. See, now if I was laying this board out from scratch, I'd make some more room and so on. I mean, actually, I think this fits okay there, but just getting that power through here is going to be annoying. So back in the day, it wasn't uncommon if you ran out of room on a board, not that we have a problem here. We can move all this down and make all kinds of space in here if we really wanted to. And probably I should, but I don't want to do that today. This resistor, if there was no other room, is my point, could have gone right in here underneath this chip, assuming that you have a socket that's like this with a big, hole in there. Other sockets may not fit. So I'm not going to pull that game. We should have a place to put it. It should be all right. It might be able to fit right in here if we wanted it to. We could maybe cheat the crystal to the left a little bit. The other alternative is to connect this to 5 volts and route this maybe through here to the jumpers. That seems a bit more viable. We could also move this capacitor. It doesn't have to be right there. Let's see here. I don't know. I don't mind this so much. Yeah, what the hey. So it's already oriented so that this would connect to 5 volts. And because it's a 4-layer board and one of the inside layers is a 5-volt power bus, this is already going to be connected to 5 volts. This only has to then run over here to a jumper that then goes to the joystick ports to connect the power up. Putting 2 of them in here is not going to be so friendly. I suppose I could put one here, like this, and another one over there, which would make it a little more obvious which one of the 9-pin connectors the jumpers are really intended to be used for. These are in my way. These are the I/O request pins that trigger the parallel ports. We've got a football pitch of space up here. We can move all this around and get it out of the way without a problem. In fact, it's not even in the way at all. Everything here would actually clear. Do I nearly need another via right there? Not really. I can just nuke that one. This whole thing has got a ground via, so is that. None of these are really going to be necessary close to all that other stuff. Let's see what this looks like. Well, that shouldn't be a problem at all. The RCA jack here, the edge of the metal is roughly at the middle of this hole. So the connector won't bounce into this. We'll have plenty of knuckle space to get those in and out of without doing really anything. I'm liking it. All right. So what we need to do here is put another one on the other side. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use only one resistor for both of these. Because like I said, I personally don't think that I'm going to use them anyway. And this one over here has to go over to that pin right there. So we can go ahead and run a wire around like so. And then we can make a little more room in the schematic by moving this little guy over here. Okay. Connect them together. Everybody's happy now. Okay. So, pin 9 now has to be connected to ground as well. Whoa. You can do that. We're 100% except for these signals here. And all I need to do for that is to grab one. Whoa. Grab one of these lines here. And copy it. Oops. And paste it in here and then change the port number to, whoopsie. Boy, I really having trouble with the keyboard today. A4, I believe, is the one that we want to use. We can change it later if it turns out that that is awkward. All right, and a 8-4 for the other one. Save this. All right, so that is going to be the ones that are down here. Okay, and I forgot to annotate again. So let's go. Well, it wouldn't matter. It would have done it from the PC board on the import anyway. Close. So that's J8 and J9 have been added along with R1. So that's new today. And we bring it into our board. Update, close. So these I got on the wrong side. I was playing around. This one's going to want to go over there. It's going to want to come over here. Something like this, right? Now, I'm going to move this track over. All right, I'm going to hit D. I'm in KiCad 5, so some of these key strokes are different on KiCad 6. A lot of people have upgraded to 6. This project is old enough. I haven't upgraded to 6 yet for almost any of my stuff because the distribution I'm running on with Ubuntu still uses KiCad 5, and I didn't want to hack that up. Laziness is why I'm still on 5, and I've been using 5 for years, and I know all the keystrokes, all of which will change when I go to KiCad 6, because that's what everyone likes to do, change things, right? I would prefer that they only add and not destroy, which is part of what I'm doing right now. I want to add, I want a backward compatible modification here. It's really annoying when things are not backward compatible, all right? So, okay, so what are we going to do here? It looks like, remember the green layer is the bottom, the red layer is on top. So it looks like I got plenty of room on the bottom layer to route this across. So I'm going to go ahead to the bottom copper. I'm going to start a track here. Now I'm going to hit Q and KiCad 5 and make this a little bit wider. I'm going to go ahead, I think I can probably make this 20 mils. It's a power-ish track. It certainly doesn't need to be anywhere near this big, but for some reason I always like to have a gumbungus trace when I'm routing something that is power related. Oh, now I'm going to go to the top layer for this one, and I'm going to bring it on down like so. Now, on the top layer, oh, okay, that's annoying. I also want to be able to bring this clear over to the other side and connect up there. So on the bottom layer, I am clear to come up and around the outside here. So that's what I'm going to do. Go back to the back side, go over here, bring it up and around. Okay. This is really not critical in almost any way. Okay. Looks like it's just going to squeeze past. We can move those vias that don't really do much anyway. Woohoo! Now, I'm going to, we'll go ahead. I could have reversed the holes on the jack because who cares, right? It doesn't really matter since this is just a put the jumper in or out kind of a thing. What really doesn't want to get any closer to that mounting hole, does it? That's good enough. No one's going to lose any sleep on that. Go back to the front side. Run a track in here, up and around. Just like the other side, over to pin 5. All right, so that gives us the ability to put in these jumpers in order to attach 5 volts to these joysticks on pin 5 if our project so needs power. And the idea is that you can abuse these. I mean, honestly, I would rather just plug something in here. If you really want to hook up something that's not a joystick and you need power, use this connector here, okay? If you want to, you can also get power for maybe an MSX joystick needs the 5 volts. I don't know. But at least you've got it now. It gives us a little bit of backward compatibility. Now, the reason there's a line here is because I haven't reported the copper zones yet. KiCad 5, you hit B to do that, and it is now will have connected these ground pads to the inside layers and flood fills. If we turn the fill regions on, you can see the wagon wheels, right? Thermal reliefs on those pins, nicely hooking it up. All right, these ones aren't there because I'm too close with this track. Good enough, it's fine. I'm not going to mess with it. We can be as sloppy as we want, and this will work fine. So that leaves us with connecting these to the furthest away pin after all the work of trying to make sure everything is in order so we don't have to cross any tracks. I made a boo-boo. Of course, you know what? Another way to do this is to move this off of that pin instead. Since this hasn't been formally released, I can always change that. And no, I'm going to leave it the way it is, and I'm going to go ahead and run a track from here. What am I going to do? I got to go around. Actually, on the back, I can just do it all on one side. This is not super duper duper clean, but it'll fit. Whoa! Come on. Zoom in a little. You can see the problem here. I can't get around this track right here. That's the video track. We don't want to be too close to that. It more likely would generate noise in the track I'm routing. Want to get rid of that via right there, make some room. And we don't have any problem with this anyway. Let's just go ahead and drag that down out of our way. We need to have all this extra bendy. Come on. There must be another. Yeah, this is garbage. Come on. Sometimes you end up with all these little bits of tracks, and then it gets hard to do that. Sort of a thing where you want to drag these and connect them together. Wow, this just doesn't want to go, does it? There we go. These are actually two different sized tracks. What the heck is that all about? I don't know. I must have fouled that up when I did it the first time. Wow. Well, let's delete the whole thing and run the whole... reroute that whole track. Okay. There. Okay. Nice clean route. Alrighty. Now we've got this one here. We can run this guy down here. I got a pretty coarse grid setting, I suppose, which is making this less than super pleasurable. Let's go ahead and get rid of this as well, or at least move it. Move it out of our way. We can move it down there if we want to even keep it, which I did because I wanted there to be nice copper fill around this track so we don't risk getting crosstalk in places like that. You know, we could also pull this down here. You wonder why everything takes 3 days to route a board. Okay, all right. Now it looks like we got a clear path down to here and all the way down to there. It makes me wonder if we should go with A83 instead of 4. Let's see how this one's going to go. If he needs to go to A83 or A93, which is this one right here, versus 4, they're right next to each other. So this doesn't, well, of course, just like they are over here. That's actually probably more, it doesn't matter. It really won't matter. Okay, so let's not overthink this too much. No matter what, somebody in the Discord will be displeased, and someone else will be thrilled, and other people won't care at all. That's how these things go. There we go. There's that one. You know, this really is, it's fine. It's got more than enough clearance. It's not going to be hard to solder, but for some reason, I always feel like, well, there's a mile of space in there. Let's use some of it. What do you say? Not that getting too close to ground is a big deal over there, but that should do ya. All right. Okay. Let me get this one in here now. I think what we want to do is take this one, run right down in here is what we want to do. So let's do exactly that. Again, on the back of the board, because the back has all the vertical tracks and all the space in it here. So, whoa, what happened? Oh, there's a track right there in my way. So what he wants me to do now, oh boy, to get over there, I need to be to the right of this green one, and I can shove it over, which I can do. Or I can be the left of A9 2 over here and go right down in this track. But I'm still going to, I then could go over here and blah, blah, blah. Let's go to the right of 6 like this. Come on. And then shove this. Don't help me. Turn off the push and shove. Now, I just clicked to set that track right there, is what I did, by the way. Otherwise, it would keep doing it over and over and flopping it around to the other side of that pin 2, and it wouldn't let me shove this track, okay, because it would prefer to reroute it the other way. So that's why it's not rerouting right now, because I forbid it from making that option by constraining what it can do. Now, why am I going? Well, that's fine. I can go to there. This is the pin. I'm looking at D4, fool. It needs to go to pin 11 over here is what it really needs to do. If I wanted to connect it up to the track where this chip is, but we can go ahead and hook it up to pin 9 there. It's the same signal, and that gives me my route around and to over there. Okay, so I hit B to report the polygons. Let me see the polygons. Now, sometimes after doing something like this, you can accidentally wipe out, your whole ground fill because you've just cut it off and prevented it from flowing into somewhere. Like this little area right here. Do we really care? I mean, probably not. But if we do put just a VR2 in here, it'll fill it in with some ground fill. And I'm looking at the back of the board, and the red is the front of the board. And the inside layers are visible. Why does it look like that? That's a very strange... Why couldn't I see the purple one? I'm looking at front and back here. Oh, it's because... interesting. The order in which they're drawn on the screen is back, front, inside, inside. Right, which is fine. That's probably because I chose to see the back layer on the front. Anyway, if I hit B in a report, you can see that all filled in. Now I'm going to shut off the polygons here. I've talked about this in my KeyCAD series. You need to make sure that when you put these in here, you didn't accidentally hit something hiding inside the board, right? Looks like this track dead ends right there, but I think what it does is it goes underneath this green one. Take a look on the front. Yes, that's what's going on there. Turn the polygons back on. I'm feeling pretty good about this. This is a pretty reasonable modification. This shouldn't be a problem. And if you leave out J9 and J8, there will be no difference really in what's going on. We do have these pins coming back around to the input ports, and if you already built yours, you can easily throw a couple of bodge wires on there and do this yourself, even with the power and the ground. So this is really no big deal. You could actually take a resistor and use the resistor and its leads itself as a bodge wire. On the back of the board, you just take one lead of the resistor and solder it on to the pin you want to pull to 5 volts, and then you run the other end of the lead to something that has 5 volts on it, like this bypass cap here would have a 5 volt. I mean, it's going to have 5 and ground on it, right? Probably this pin right here is 5 volts. So you can just lay it underneath the board like that if you want to hack your old board. And I mean, there's a whole art form to that back in the day. If you haven't built yours at all yet, then get the new Gerbers and get this version. I'm going to go ahead and mark it 2.1. because that's where we're at now. And this looks pretty good. Flip it over, look at the back, make sure there's nothing weird going on over there. You can see the new track coming around like that on this one, and then the new track goes this way on that one. And I don't see it doing anything too terrible. All righty. Go ahead and save that. Now what are we going to do in here? Now, for whatever reason, I never really set the page settings. I don't usually use the title block on my Gerbers, right? So I've never done this on the PC board. I do it in the schematic pretty religiously. Say that's 2. I want to make that to a 2.1. And I'm going to move it to today's date. Now this says 2.1, and the other one I wrote Rev 2.1. So let's go back to the circuit board and make these the same. I wasn't thinking. Well, I was thinking, but I was thinking too much. If you don't know, there is a title block down here, even on the Gerber drawings. And you can even blot this onto the Gerber if you want to. The board houses probably don't want you to do that. I don't recommend it. Because then you'll end up with a circuit board that has got a giant, you'll end up with a great big circuit board with a title block etched into it. So that's why we don't normally plot it. I don't even look at it usually. And hence my lack of knowledge that I even left it undone. All right, so that should take care of that. And I think now we have our Rev 2, and this point it is 2.1 ready to go. So now that I've done all this, and I did it while talking, I need to make really sure that pin 7 is the button 2, and 9 goes to ground, and 5 goes to 5 volts. I believe that is correct. 5 goes to 5, 9 goes to ground, 7 is the new button number 2, and we're all done. Woohoo! All right, so I'm going to push this up as Rev 2.1 to the GitHub repo, and I might actually order some of these. Why not? I always feel bad, you know, if I actually do one of these and give it away, and so, then other people have to test my stuff. What if it's broken? Well, the odds are pretty low that this particular mod is broken. But there could always be something weird. Like right now, I never actually went over here and generated the new Gerbers, right? I mean, in theory, I could make a mistake and forget to make the new Gerbers. Or the real classic for me that I always screw up is I forget to change the blasted revision on the silk screen. Oh my gosh. Rev 2.1, please. Save. Now plot the Gerbers. Gerber, Gerber, Gerber. Plot, plot, plot. Don't forget the drills. Close them, close them. Control S to save. Now go back to the schematic. Another thing that I quite often forget to do is I forget to plot the new PDF of the schematic. And I usually make a PDF. I mean, a lot of people post, oh, here's my KiCad files and stuff, and they're all on GitHub. And I love it that they do that. Don't get me wrong. But if you don't put a PDF of the schematic, it's a giant pain in the butt because you actually have to clone the files, bring them down, fire up KiCad, look at the thing. You know, and I'm on my phone or something, and I want to just take a quick look at a schematic. Come on, people. What am I going to do? Get an Android release of KiCad? No. That's just rude. Generate a freaking PDF, please. All right, so I think we're finally done with at least the easy mods and enhancements that go along with the main reason of Rev 2, which was to deal with allowing us to sneak a peek at this interrupt pin without necessarily generating interrupts and all that stuff, if we so desire, by looking at A81 over here when you put in J7, okay? And while we're at it, yeah, sure. Why not support the MSX 2-button joysticks? Because these pins are not connected otherwise. Who cares? By connecting them, we are now going to create a potential problem. If somebody decides to put in an Atari paddle controller, those things are analog devices and not supported anyway. And they look like this, right? If you plug that in and you move this paddle back and forth, there's a potentiometer in there. The only way to do that is to use an analog input of some kind. Quite common to use like hook it up to a 555 timer and allow it to change the duty cycle, so you can then measure the width of a square wave to figure out whether the angle of the knob and stuff like that, so that you can still read it digitally, but I don't have any of that circuit in this design. Therefore, doing so, plugging one in here is not going to work. And hooking up at a hard 5 volts to one of the ends of that potentiometer without some kind of a limiting resistor, and this is not really going to be enough of one, by the way. If you do, run, the full brunt of the current through one of those joysticks, you may burn up the potentiometer in there. I'm just saying. All right, we were never compatible with them in the first place, so I don't feel bad making this mod. We got the jumpers, so there's a little bit of protection. You want as much power as you can get, then put just run a wire across this resistor. If you do want to limit it, pick a size that's appropriate. I'm going to say anything over 100 ohms is going to be pretty darn safe, especially in a 1/4 watt resistor. Anything under 100 ohms, you're on your own. you decide what's safe for you. Personally, if I wanted 5 volts and I was going to run TTL circuitry and stuff and use this as some sort of an expansion port, which is, these are only inputs, so you can't really write anything to them. But, if you've got a device that generates bit patterns, you want to read them or something, you could either hook it up to this thing or you can plug it into DB9. And you would, if it was me, I would just short this to 0 ohms so I could run as much power as I really wanted off of that connector. Now, if you watch my channel, you know I like to do these diffs between the different versions of my boards. Now, I haven't made a formal tag for the next revision yet, because people have been chiming in with these good ideas on the Discord. So I'm going to leave this in the dev branch. And this is a candidate release as 2.1. My point is that if you look at the Git log, there's no tag here, but there is a tag down, earlier for revision 1. So, yes, this is the dev branch, but this is the head of the dev branch. So I have this script that I have that generates the diffs between the revision 1 and the head node of the current branch. So I run this script. It generates these files. Let's go ahead and look at these things. And we saw this before when I did the first pass at Rev 2, and I played around with the header over here and the routing there to get the signal over here for the interrupt with J7 to connect it up to 881. Here are the mods we did today, and they all look good to me. Here's me playing around with the one trace that did the push and shove to move the other one over, and then this one here took the place of where the other one was. You run down here. Okay, here is the other joystick button input, and I moved the video output trace over to the left a little bit to get myself some clearance there. What did I do with these? Oh, I moved this over to make room for the jumper, so that makes sense. And here's the resistor holes in the power track that goes to the jumper. All right, perfect. So again, I do this to make sure I didn't accidentally delete or mar up something on the board. I usually like to do a quick sanity check. Otherwise you don't really know. Okay, what do we got going over here? Remember, this is from Rev 1 to the head, which is today. So this is everything we did before plus what we did just today. Remember, I added the NMI link. I replaced and messed around with the header over here last time, and I added this jumper here last time. Today, all I did was play around with these guys right here. So I added connections to 3 pins that used to have these X's on them here and there. Perfect for button 2. Okay, that all looks good. So I'd love to hear the any comments you have and ideas on these mods I'm making here before I push out a real release. Obviously, this is a pretty good one. It was a freebie, no real cost here. These are great ideas. Let me know in the comments below or on the Discord. And I can always work them in, no problem. there you go. There's our 2.1. And as far as I'm concerned, I think we really can't take this a whole lot further without any real structural redesign of what's going on. But this will give us MSX. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the Discord.